You know that a high-performance culture in your company demands that you communicate skillfully. What you might not know is that there is a high-tech computerized tool to help you understand personality traits quickly. It's called the Drake P3 system, an advanced behavioral assessment, communication, and management system used globally. As a valued client of Drake, we invite you to install the Drake P3 software and learn dynamic, new communication skills from this video training session. The session is organized into 4 sections: the science of the Drake P3 system, your personal behavioral style, your co-workers' behavioral styles, and flexing your traits to communicate with style. To maximize your learning experience, please have your own Drake P3 communication profile report when watching this video. Let's get started. The Drake P3 system is a highly advanced behavioral assessment technology. Now, the study of human behavior is not new. Hippocrates in ancient Greece was one of the first to document and categorize basic behavioral traits. Hippocrates observed that a person's future behavior could be predicted by understanding an individual's core behavioral traits. In the more recent past, prior to and during World War II, the use of behavioral trait assessments dramatically enhanced the U.S. military's ability to successfully select fighter and bomber pilots from the civilian population. Due to the success of this selection process, the first civilian and corporate applications were developed. And today, through the use of computers, assessing behavior has become faster, easier, and extremely accurate. Companies throughout the world are embracing our technology as an effective means of predicting employment success, improving communication, and as an important tool to help managers lead staff toward new levels of performance. Our technology utilizes a short adjective checklist called a communication survey to measure behavioral traits. The research supporting this technology proves that individuals respond favorably to adjectives which most accurately describe his or her behavioral tendencies. Responses to the communication survey adjectives are entered into the Drake P3 software, where more than 14,000 mathematical calculations are processed. From this data, a communication profile report is generated. Please take a moment and refer to the behavioral trait graph on the first page of your communication profile. You'll want to become very familiar with this graph because it's a useful reference tool for understanding both yourself and others. On the top of the trait graph are listed the 4 behavioral traits which are technology measures. They are dominance, extroversion, patience, and conformity. In the middle of the graph, the horizontal midline is marked 0. The numbers above and below the midline indicate the intensity of each of the particular traits. This graphing methodology is called an ipsative graph. Ipsative means that your personal behavioral trait pattern is shown as centered around the 0 mark of the graph. Before you read your own communication profile, it's important to understand that as individuals, we all possess some characteristics of all 4 primary behavioral traits. However, 50 to 70% of our recognizable behavior reflects our highest trait. A person's high trait is the one that's furthest above the 0 midline, the one with the highest positive numerical value on the trait graph. For example, a person with a high dominance trait is most likely to project a competitive and direct style of communicating. A high extrovert is most likely to exhibit a persuasive and friendly manner when communicating. A person with a high trait of patience will typically exhibit a warm, empathetic style when dealing with coworkers, and a high conformist will project a committed and detailed approach to dealing with procedures, projects, and people. The midline is the base to measure the intensity of the traits. The higher or lower the number, the stronger the trait is manifested. It makes a difference if the number is a 9 or 29. The low trait is the trait furthest below the midline and has the most significant modifying impact on the high trait. It accounts for up to 20% of a person's behavioral tendencies. The 2 remaining traits also help to modify behavior but have less impact. When you read your own communication profile, please make note that the report describes your primary behavioral traits as well as secondary traits, your leadership style, and your sensitive areas and your potential reactions, how you may react, hurt, embarrassed, angry, etc., if your needs are not met. Also included are lists detailing your primary motivators, demotivators, and secondary motivators. Now, your communication profile also measures your approach to making decisions. There is no one best way to make a decision, since it primarily depends on your work environment and the kind of work you do. Also in the communication profile, you'll find that your energy level is measured. Your energy level is often thought of as a battery charge. If individuals have a large reserve of energy, they could potentially weather more setbacks before physically and emotionally wearing down. However, there is no direct relationship between taking responsibility for performing on the job and higher energy levels. Sometimes an individual with lower energy in a high-energy job can experience burnout. Conversely, a high-energy person in a low-energy job may find himself or herself bored. Your communication profile also measures your current stress level. The stress level indicates how you are handling your current environmental adjustments. The stress level changes approximately monthly. Stress isn't something that can or should be avoided completely. However, excessive stress can become distress, which can lead to undesirable forms of physical and emotional ills. Statistically tracking the results of more than 2 million individual communication profiles shows that over 90% of the population finds their profile more than 90% accurate. Please take time, 5 or 6 minutes, to read your own profile. Then, complete the profile verification page, that's the last page of the report, and tell us how accurate you find your own personal communication profile. To better understand our coworkers' behavioral styles, let's begin a detailed examination of the 4 behavioral traits by watching the traits in action. The meeting you're about to see is concerning the release of a new product, a meeting that's probably like many you've attended.
The reason we're here this afternoon is to go over a new product release. Mark, Mary, pay close attention. We'd like to start selling this product next week. Susan, begin.
Thanks, Bill. Over the past 2 years, we've been consistently changing the K22, and now we're able to release the upgraded product. Well, we don't expect that our sales force will jump into selling the new K22 right away. But if you could come back to us with some customer feedback, we will take your input and go back to the review team with your suggestions.
Susan, do you have any samples of the K22 with you? I have customers right now that I know I can sell this to. In fact, why don't we schedule an open house? I invite our best customers in to visit the factory and we could demonstrate it here.
Mark, you know what our corporate policy is regarding customers touring our plant. We need at least 3 weeks to get the clearance from the individual factory team leaders. And with our current production schedule, I don't see how that could possibly happen before the end of the month.
Mark, even if we can't have a factory demonstration, I'm sure I could help you by creating a product introduction kit for you to show to your customers.
Susan, mock up a K22 product introduction kit for Mark by next week. Make sure it includes a list of competitive advantages and a price list.
Okay, I'll try to have that done for next week's meeting.
Speaking of the price list, has it been approved by the CFO?
No, I haven't found time to present it.
Well, we're not allowed to sell anything without the CFO's sign-off. Now, that policy has been in place for the last 6 months. Other departments have been criticized that didn't follow it.
I could call Mr. Fell tomorrow. I don't want to ask him to rush the approval process, but I'll explain to him how much we would value his cooperation.
Susan, I'll call John Feld myself. This price list for the K22 is too important to get bogged down in finance.
Where is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers checklist for the K22? They specifically state that products cannot be released to the public until all requirements are met.
Well, engineering has been very busy working on other projects. I didn't want to pressure them for the K22 checklist. We have scheduled a meeting with the inspector, and we found it's best not to make any changes when dealing with the ASME. We have a good relationship, so I should get the approvals we need.
I'm not worried about price right now, or ASME for that matter. Most of my customers buy from me because of my close relationship with them. Hey, I've got some customers right now who would like to take a look at the new K22 and I'd like to start selling it right away. Why don't I set a meeting, Susan, between you and me and some of my best accounts for later this week? You know, when I sold that K15 product line, it worked real well for me.
When I'm finished with the CFO, I'll have my assistant type up a new price list. Susan, you nail down your end of the project and let's get this thing going. This should have been released 2 months ago. The K-22 product delay is negatively affecting my bottom line results for this fiscal quarter. We'll have to get control of this situation and improve profits. Now, since we're all together, let's talk about the substandard delivery times that we've been having. Mary, what is the procedure for going about this process?
Can you tell which person is exhibiting behavioral traits that are closely associated with dominance, extroversion, patience, conformity? Let's take a look at these 4 behavioral traits in more depth. People with the high trait of dominance are hard-driving risk-takers, completing goals as their priority. High dominant people want to be in charge and to control their environment. Confident in their abilities, they are authoritarian, daring, and competitive. Dominance may be abrasive at times and critical of others. They demand results. High dominant individuals are motivated by personal achievement and by the need to be in control. What drives a dominant is competitive challenges and achieving results. Along with key motivators, be aware of high dominance sensitivities. They value control and are sensitive to a personal lack of control. A high dominant's many strengths can become weaknesses, especially if overused in a stressful environment. It happens that in a stressful situation, a high dominant person can come off as impersonal. Their communication style can become abrasive. Their tendency to be competitive can be seen by others as that of a poor collaborator. A dominant person who is very focused on achieving results can show an aggressive manner. As for a high dominant's greatest fear, it is losing control of a situation. In contrast to the high dominant is the lower dominant behavioral trait, the cooperative trait. People lower in dominance are congenial. They are very approachable. Less likely to take risks, lower dominant people are modest and cautious. To avoid emotionally charged situations, lower dominants express a low-key and cooperative communication style. They are composed and reflective. Lower dominants take into consideration the consequences of their actions. When making decisions, lower dominants are likely to accept input and support from others because they value consensus. And while others' input is valued, lower dominant individuals are sensitive to conflict and will avoid pressured situations. Communicate with a lower dominant person by gathering information from them as to how a project or decision will impact their environment and that of fellow workers. A primary concern of lower dominance is consideration of others. The next trait is extroversion, the outgoing and persuasive trait. Extroverts are sociable, articulate, friendly, and want to be liked. Their communication style is persuasive. They're attracted to larger groups and gatherings and stand out as enthusiastic, upbeat, and optimistic. Extroverts are motivated by an opportunity to interact and talk with people. They live to promote, and they thrive on public recognition, praise, and encouragement. Stress leads extroverts to overuse their strengths. For instance, an extrovert's strong social focus can lead to being distracted from important completion of tasks. An extrovert's enthusiastic communication can lead to talking too much and result in being a poor listener. Overly optimistic extroverts can become impractical. As for extroverts' greatest fear, it's being stuck in a room, alone, without a phone. In contrast to extroversion is introversion, the reserve trait. People with introversion are internally focused. They're concerned with knowing what they are talking about before speaking. Introverts are quiet, serious, and private. They're reserved in social situations, often removing themselves from too much involvement with others. Introverts are thoughtful, reflective people. Because introverts are reserved and contemplative, you may notice a reluctance on their part to trust concepts or recommendations that are unproven. When communicating with introverts, do not assume that you are not building rapport due to their reserved manner. Introverts process communication internally, and they prefer a conservative rather than flamboyant communication style. Our next characteristic to explore is patience, the caring and paced trait. People with the high trait of patience are amiable, calm, steady, and paced. Because of their need for harmony in the work environment, high patients are diplomatic co-workers. They regard life's complexities with an easygoing attitude. High patients are regarded as stable and dependable workers. A prime motivator for high patients is a steady and paced work environment. Harmony and cooperation among co-workers must prevail. In patients' day-to-day job duties, predictable patterns and responsibilities are necessary. It's of vital importance for patients to maintain good relationships in their workplace. Stress can turn high patients' behavioral strengths into weaknesses. Specifically, if the work environment becomes stressed, unsteady, and not paced, patient people can become withdrawn and passive. They avoid conflict and resist change at all costs because harmony and cooperation needs are their focus. Patient people can become dependent on coworkers, imposing stress on the working relationship. Patient people's greatest fears are sudden changes and risky, conflict-ridden situations. In contrast to high patience is impatience, the urgency trait. Impatient people are fast-paced and intense. They convey a sense of urgency and take quick action. Those with impatience tend to prefer a variety of tasks, function well under pressure, and may appear restless. A quick-paced and changing work environment motivates impatient people. They need to see the results of their efforts immediately. Stress causes impatient people who are adept at meeting deadlines to become upset when co-workers do not meet the deadlines. Because of their intense sense of urgency, a big challenge for impatient people is effective listening. Our fourth primary trait is conformity, the systematic traditionalist trait. High conformists respond well to structure, systems, and precision. They're considered to be perfectionists and have strong analytical skills. Conformists follow rules by the book and are concerned about what is correct. People with high conformity are motivated in situations where policies, procedures, and quality control systems are in place. Details are important to a conformist, and they must have time to dot the I's and cross the T's. They enjoy an environment where the standards are high and fair. Stress can turn conformists' strengths into weaknesses. For example, bureaucratic tendencies crop up when conformists need to do things by the book. Perfectionism causes conformists to worry about details. A focus on details can cause a high conformist to appear impersonal, and driven to be correct, a conformist can become critical of others. A conformist's greatest fear is being wrong, accompanied by being criticized for being wrong. The opposite of high conformity is nonconformity, the independent trait. Nonconformists focus on the big picture and are generally open to exploring new ideas and breaking new ground. Their outspoken and uninhibited style leads them to act out independently. They need to be free from controls and close supervision. Nonconformists prefer that others tend to details and follow through. Nonconformists are flexible and unstructured. They think and plan on a large scale without orientation to details. They are often creative and viewed as generalists. Please take a moment now and turn to the high and low trait section of your workbook. In this section, you will find various exercises that will deepen your knowledge of the high and low traits. While some of us clearly have a single high trait, others can have a dual high trait, evidenced on the graph by two trait measures that are the same or highly similar in value. When this occurs, an individual has the ability to flex between the dual high traits, emphasizing one over the other based upon the demands of different situations. For example, Bill's dominance measure is +17 and his extroversion is a +16. Depending on the situation, he can be aggressive or he can use a highly persuasive and encouraging style to achieve results. Although a person's high trait makes the greatest impact on behavior, a person's low trait, the one with the lowest numerical value, also strongly influences behavior. For example, Mark has a high degree of extroversion and a low degree of conformity. His extroversion is +26 and his conformity is -26. High extroversion combined with nonconformity yields a gregarious, independent, creative, behavioral style. Understanding the trait combinations of a person's high trait with their low trait offers valuable insights into an individual's predictable behavior. In your workbooks is a section on the interaction of high and low traits. In addition to analyzing the 4 primary behavior traits, the Drake P3 technology measures an individual's current environmental adjustments. These adjustments indicate how an individual is moving or flexing behavioral traits to accomplish his or her job-specific responsibilities. Our primary behavioral trait patterns are established at a very young age, typically between the ages of 7 and 12. These formative years play a vital role in anchoring our individual identities. Primary traits tend to remain consistent throughout our lives, much like the grooves in a record. Once the pattern is established, it tends to remain the same. As we grow through adolescence, we begin to develop